Welcome to the Weaponized Marriage Podcast. We're just back from our couples retreat from
encouragement.
Yeah, in the Dominican Republic. So I thought we would kind of catch everybody up on that trip, what it was, some of our experience with it, and then the fun we had, and also some of the stuff that came up. Because I think it's a really good conversation to have around some emotions and stuff that comes up in your marriage you might not be easily able to approach.
So what do you mean?
Well, recap Dominican and then we'll go from there.
Well, I mean, the Dominican was not our choice of vacation spots. It was a predetermined trip with some other couples. And so I didn't set a whole lot of high expectations. I don't know why. I just thought that maybe it was just your average island, and I did a little bit of research beforehand and it said don't take Ubers, don't take cabs. It's not safe. I was like, oh, great. Kendra's not going to relax the whole time. And it turned out first of all, it was only a 3-hour and 40-minute plane ride from Boston,
Direct,
which was nice. And we were in a gated area. So it was all safe and protected, but it wasn't just we were relegated to our Airbnb or hotel. We had access.
And we were in a luxury level Airbnb.
We had
our own private chef and private driver, but we didn't know all of those.
Yeah, so we had access to a couple beaches and a couple hotels, and our place was great. So yeah, all in all, it was
far exceeded.
Yeah, so the experience was great as far as the accommodation and the food and the people we got to spend it with. And yeah, we had a private driver, so we were able to go off resort and go to the gym a couple times
safely.
Yeah. So, overall, it worked out great. The weather was beautiful most of the time. And yeah, we got some sunshine. I got to meet some monkeys.
That was probably awesome. One of my highlights of the trip.
It was something I always wanted to do was go have an experience with wild monkeys. So, yeah.
Well, one of the things for me was that this trip was pre-planned way in advance. And like I said, it was part of a couple's container, we call it, that we had started in October with a trip in October with the same couples. And it was a really, really, that also exceeded my expectations of what we both got out of it. I felt.
Yeah. So it was led and it was designed to help us grow. So, and there was
definitely growth.
Yeah. So why don't you talk about.
So one of the things that I think that I'll lead off with the monkeys, because Ryan has always said he wanted to go to. You always said Costa Rica because you wanted to meet monkeys, and we'd had this conversation about taking Lily to meet these monkeys, and so something very unique, because this trip was pre-planned by other people for us. I really did not do any looking into what was down there. And I was so in caretaking mode between Lily, my mom, and Ryan with his injury that I had very little bandwidth for let's look for something fun. And I actually had no idea how much I needed that rest until we got there and we're a couple days in. And stuff started to hit me of wow, you're really freaking tired. And you need to, restore your energy. That's how it kept, how I kept hearing it. But when it comes to the monkeys, so we literally landed in Dominican Republic and I was like, shit, I've never done this before. I've never, ever not looked into what are things to do prior to going on a trip, weeks in advance. So I was like, this is very different for me, including Ryan stepped up and took care of a couple things because I was inundated with other last minute things getting ready for our trip. You took care of our immigration forms and all these things that probably if I had to do them would have probably put me in a much more anxious, over the edge kind of fried.
You were already
and I was already there for a couple other reasons. But so I look up this monkey thing and I was like, holy shit, there's a place you can meet monkeys here. This is awesome. So I show it to Ryan and he's like, well, read the reviews and make sure it's like legit. And I was like, so I did. And they were like amazing. And so we're at dinner with the other couples that we're traveling with who are all like, we've become extremely close with. And I feel like we could really be like our true selves. But the most amazing part was like, we were all in this, like I said, very fancy Airbnb, which we would have never got ourselves. But because we had a big group, we could. And it was nice that we were all spread out enough that like we could have our own experience and our own time together, but we could also like share, and we always came together for meals. So at this meal, I talk about how like the next day I was like, Ryan really wants to see these monkeys. And other people were like, yeah, I'm afraid of monkeys, like whatever, except our one friend, Nick, he was like, I have always wanted to do this. And it was like a 10-year-old little boy. He's not 10 years old. He's 40 plus years old. And his energy about it was so cute. And he was leaving early from the trip. I was like, Ryan, we have to do this with Nick tomorrow. And it really kicked off our trip in like a really playful energy, I thought. Like it was like, because you guys were both, it was Nick, Ryan, and I that went to see these monkeys. And you both were just like childlike wonder and curiosity and awe. And I had an amazing time, not only with the monkeys, but just like being with you.
Yeah. And we got to do like, I imagine most people in Dominican, they stay on resort and just soak up the sun and drink and party. But we actually got to, like, our driver stopped the van. He's like, hey, these are cocoa trees. And he pulled off like a cocoa bean. It was huge. And he smashed it open and showed it to us and showed us what actual cocoa beans look like. And he's like, yeah, over here, these are like papaya trees. Yeah. And then there's these other things. So we kind of got, and so we did the monkey experience. And on the way home, I'm like, we're starving. Like, let's stop and get food. And he stopped at these like roasted chestnuts that someone had hung by the side of the road. And she just like gave them to us. I was like, no, we need carne. We need some comidos. Like, and he's like, okay. So we stopped at this like authentic Dominican barbecue place. It was like exactly how you picture it. There's a guy with like a crutch,
basically
man in the grill, and then another guy with a cane, like serving it up, and another guy who's making like special Dominican juice to put on the meat. And it was awesome. Like,
I think they were very impressed that I kept asking for more meat, because like they were like,
well, they kept feeding me. They're like, this guy. Like,
they're like, this guy's strong, and they're like, you too, and like, and I was like, yeah, give me more. And like it was really an authentic, off the beaten path experience that was priceless in my ways. And one of the things that stands out for that moment was we had a really amazing conversation with Nick. Nick's, like I said, one of my really good friends. He's amazing. He's a coach. And I just think that we had this great conversation on the way there and great conversation. But one of the things on the way back, but one of the things that stood out was when we're sitting down at the Dominican stand, literally on the side of the road, and we're the only people in there. And I turned around to Nick. I can't remember if you heard me say this or not, but we were talking about like definitions of wealth in the car, and like associations about money and abundance. And this was part of the conversation. And I turned around to Nick and I was like, Nick, how wealthy are we? And he's like, oh my God, that's such a good question. And he's like at infectious enthusiasm. And I was like, man, if you really think about that, if you look around your life and you look at like, even like in your day, can you figure out, even when you feel stressed about money or stressed about paying a bill or unexpected bill comes in, which since I've been home has literally been every day. I keep going back to this moment of asking Nick, like, how wealthy are we right now in this moment, in this being not only present, but sharing this moment that couldn't have a price tag put on it. And that was a really powerful moment for me in the trip. Which brings me to another powerful moment that I think that we were going to talk about today. And let me think how I want to bring this up. One of the things that had happened prior to us leaving on this trip is I think I started to feel some anxiety around immortality. And what I mean by that is I'm in a place where Ryan is, has a traumatic injury that he's working through, but it's still not discounting that it happened, and it is a traumatic injury. And how it's affecting each one of us, and really being on vacation, even on the flight there, gave me the time to sit and reflect uninterrupted. And then I thought about some of the challenges I'm having with Lily, and like what type of parent I want to be and how I want to handle certain situations with her. And then I have my mom, who's 77, and she's presenting other challenges for me as I am now acting as her parent in lots of ways. And even as I say that, it makes me feel uncomfortable to say that, but starting to get a little bit more open and vulnerable with that, with Ryan. And when we're on our way there, prior to that week, I had been experiencing like a lot of sadness, a lot of like, why am I crying? What am I crying about? I don't know what I'm crying about. And then like trying to explain to, like, Ryan would look at me and he'd be like, are you crying? What are you crying about? And I would be like, at this current moment, I have no idea. And like, could I sit with that sadness and just like let it come out of me rather than try to stuff it down, which is the model I've seen my whole life. With my mom, just like putting on a happy face, always being strong, much more of a survival mentality, which served us to a certain point. But I'm really starting to realize and put the pieces together that it's not serving her any longer. But she's like, at the end stages of her life. And so I was feeling a lot of like sadness and grief. And I was not really able to figure out at this point until we got ourselves out of this environment, out of our home, into a vacation mode, to really sit with some of this in silence. And never did I think that expressing this would make me feel more connected to you, but it did. And then it also gave you permission to share with me some of the grief you were going through. So why don't you share a little bit of your experience? Because that's what I felt would be valuable today, just a part of the conversation of like, hey, how do you support each other when like one of you, or maybe both of you, are handling grief, sadness, maybe it's shame, maybe it's guilt, these more, quote, negative emotions that still need to be felt, that still need to be experienced, still need to be like, they're going to keep coming up unless you actually work with them, release them, or confront them. Because you can be in a marriage where each other is grieving different things or sad about different things. Like, and one of our mentors said this to me that really stuck with me. She was like, grief is a process and it is never linear, meaning just because you didn't have some sort of loss, a loss of a job, a loss of a loved one, a loss of a pet, whatever it is, doesn't mean that you won't experience grief. You can grieve your childhood. You can grieve your lack of something. You can grieve having too much of something. You can go through that process, but then sadness is an emotion, and sadness needs to be felt. It needs to be, like I said, released. It can't be stuffed, or else it will keep coming back up, usually at inopportune times. And I have this big belief is that like when something's ready to heal, it's going to present itself. And the more you keep packing it back down, the stronger that presentation is going to be. So part of me going into this trip was I was releasing a lot of grief and sadness, but I couldn't really explain to Ryan what that was. But for the first time in our marriage, I felt like very okay with being vulnerable about the things I was sad about, the things I was grieving, even though some of them I could not really articulate or explain to you. And then you had your own experience with grief and sadness. So why don't you share that a little bit about that?
Well, I think, first, before I share like my experience with it, I think that So just speaking from like a male perspective, a husband's perspective, I think that if your wife feels comfortable falling apart, in front of you, I think that that's a really good thing, because that means that she trusts your ability to take, hold her sadness, hold the space for her to just process emotion, to lose control, to let it out, to, I guess just feel whatever it is that she needs to go through, and not take it. What I figured out is like holding space is just not to take it personally, because when you take it personally, that's when you react. That's when you take it in a defensive manner, or you think it's about you. So trying to understand that like you being sad is not always about me, right? Mm-hmm. Because part of your sadness leading up to our retreat was like, you felt bad about where you were in life. Like you felt bad about like, I should have a job. I should be making money. I should be contributing to our finances. I should be in a better place. Financially, I should have, produced something or built a business.
And that was part of your injury. That's what your injury was bringing up for me. So, is that like, I was like, oh, wow, I'm really dependent on Ryan in lots of ways, and I should be doing more like that. And so it put me in a shame loop.
Okay. But just let me talk about this, because what you have to realize is like what I would have done in the past, and I did it a little bit, but then I caught myself, was like, Kendra's sad because she thinks we should be making more money. And that is like an attack on me as the producer. That is like Kendra saying that I'm not enough. I'm not doing a good enough job. I'm not making enough money. I'm not making the right decisions. And it took everything in me to just like not defend myself, not react, not be angry, because in the past that definitely would have been the case. And then Kendra would have left that being like, well, I can't fucking trust him.
I can't tell him this stuff
with my emotion. I can't. And you said this 1,000 times. I can't tell you anything. I just can't tell you. And then that would make me more mad, because I'm like, well, fuck, you can't tell me anything. You don't think we make enough money. And then
you would spin a story.
Yeah. And well, then it turns into a whole thing that it didn't have to be. So,
and that isn't true.
Okay. So, and the reality of it is like, Kendra just wanted to feel her feelings and process it and just release the emotion of it, because it it passes. It goes, it's not going to like hurt. You feeling that way wasn't going to stay that way, right? You just had to like feel it. And she wanted to, tell me about it and trust me with that situation, those emotions. And, it's not always, my job to like make sure that like, like you have to like come to me every time you feel sad, but to be able to feel honored when you do and not react and take it personally. So I'll just put that out there just as something that I've discovered that actually will make you closer. You'll be like, it contributes to better intimacy. You feel safer.
I was going to say, it's a new level. I feel like after this, like last 6 months of this group, one of the things that I have really, really seen is how much safer you feel for me to be all parts of me, not put together. Not like, hey, this is what I need to present to Ryan so he knows I'm not scared about this, or he knows I'm not worried about this. It's like, you have really started to be way more secure for me to show all of the parts.
Yeah, but it took a lot of work to get there. It took a lot of work to make me realize like the reason that I react to you feeling like we don't make enough money is like what I saw growing up. And then I would see my mom criticizing my dad, and then my dad getting angry. I was like, oh, okay, well this is the same thing playing out. And it would just come out of it would just show up in my body. Without even doing it on purpose. Yeah. But Kendra doesn't know that. So this is why like your triggers are your responsibility. And once you have a handle on those, you can see how those show up for you and how it doesn't get you what you want. So my intention was to like deepen our intimacy and
with this group.
Yes.
Like,
so, and
like being in this group, I should say.
Yes. And then, so this, I think everything to a degree. And a lot of times it happens for a reason. So this is the kind of stuff that showed up beforehand. Mm-hmm. And then like Kendra pretty much just realized like, I just really have to rest. And she like rested a lot. For me, some of the things that came up as far as like the first night was that like my mom was coming up a lot for me, and which was interesting because it sort of came out of nowhere because my mom passed in 2020. It was 6 years ago or 5.5 years ago. And like I had done some work with it, and, you know, I had some closure about, you know, having a ceremony with her ashes and, you know, just being in a good place with how I felt about her.
Tell people a little bit of the story though, so they have the context of like what happened.
Yeah. I mean,
unless you don't want to.
Anyway, so like some sadness came up for my mom, and I realized that there was still some forgiveness that had to happen, like out loud. I don't know if I ever really realized that there's a difference between saying things out loud and just saying them internally. Just saying out loud some forgiveness and just processing more what I found out is like grief. And I don't really understand the difference between grief and sadness other than what you explained, that grief is more of a process. Sadness is just the emotions that come up when you're grieving. But I needed to process some more of that. And that was something that I just told Kendra about it. You know, that wasn't something that I like discussed with her or whatnot. It wasn't really till our second night together that we spent more time together in conversation and in connection. And yeah, I mean, Kendra just sensed that there was some more sadness in me. And I think that at that moment, and by the way, plant medicine had something to do with this. So it just, my heart was open and I was really, you know, deep internal, and like I could feel Kendra wanting to see, you know, some of the vulnerability that she wanted to help me. Like she just wanted to help me. And I understood that. And I just, you know, I sort of just let my guard down and I just got really like sad and upset. And I think part of it was I realized, and a lot of guys will resonate with this, that in your marriage and your relationship, like it's the man's job to be the strong one and to hold the family and to produce and to like move forward and to like you know, just put your family on your back and do the work. And when I broke my leg and dislocated my ankle, like I had a really hard time like reconciling with like I'm just sitting on the couch, like I'm focusing on my business, but I'm having to rely on Kendra. And
you were never just sitting on the couch.
Okay, well, I was a lot more inactive than I'd been in my whole life. And I didn't realize like I internalized some of this like disappointment, and some of it, like I just fell apart for a minute and just let some of that go. And I think there's value in like being stoic and not becoming emotional in stressful situations and being decisive and being strong. Like there's definitely value in that. But like I discovered there's also value in just like letting your wife like see your heart. And I think there's a time and place. Like you don't want to see me like sulk and fall apart and just be emotional all the time and just be a disaster. Like, and that's, I'm not pulled to do that anyway. Like there's definitely times where, and everybody is human. Like you're going to feel sadness. You're going to feel happy. You're going to feel frantic and stressed and depressed and ecstatic. You know, those are all normal feelings. But I think the more you let your wife see your authentic you, I think rather than this, like, I think this story that we tell ourselves that like, she's going to think I'm weak. She's going to think that I'm
Because that's the story you were protecting.
But I think a lot of men think this is like, my wife's going to think I'm a pussy if she sees me cry.
Or how you voiced it was you said, I don't want you to like be worried about me.
Yeah. So I didn't want Kendra to be worried because, already she's stressed about money. Already she's stressed about the business. Already she's worried about my ankle fully recovering and me going back to work. So I didn't want to like show her that like, yeah, I'm worried too.
And that also weaved in some of my dad's story. I think you should.
Okay. So I don't even know if people will relate to this at all, but for Kendra, like she lost her dad when she was 11, right? 10, 12?
12.
When you were 12. Yeah. And like she watched her dad become disabled and then pass like 3 years after he was, disabled by the accident. So she saw like his body get broken and his spirit get broken. And Kendra knows that like that's not our story, but it's hard not for those memories to come up of like, wow, I saw this happen to my mom. And this is what happened with my mom. She's completely dissociated from feelings. She went to producer mode and like, is where she's at 77 years old. So there's some of that I didn't want Kendra to like feel that way. So I didn't want her to see like, this is going to break my spirit. Like I'm going to frame this into a way that's going to work for us, in which we did that, but it doesn't mean it's still not upsetting. So I think a powerful moment for us was just like letting her see that like, hey, I get scared too. I'm upset. And I let her see that and tell me like, why was that good? Why was that good that you got to see that?
Well, I think this is a really important moment to bring up. That is like an awareness that we were both projecting the same thing, but we were unable to share it until we were in a place that you basically broke the mold on. Meaning, I feel like I go through a lot of my life trying to hold it together. And you were feeling the same exact way. I got to hold it together. I don't want her to see me vulnerable. I don't want her to think I'm weak. I don't want her to worry about us. I don't want her to think that I'm going to have a broken spirit, because I had shared that story about my dad because when your leg was elevated, I was sharing that I had like almost like a flashback of being a kid and seeing him go through this. And I point blank said to Ryan, I said, I know this isn't how this story ends for you, but it's bringing up all of this experience that I had as a child that I've never thought about until I visually saw your leg being elevated in our bed. And it brought me back to seeing my dad that way and knowing that how much he loved me, but that he was hit by a drunk driver, that's how he was disabled, really broke his heart because it limited what physically he could do. And he did not have the support and the tools and the resources that you and I have. So you sharing that vulnerability allowing you to, I would not even say fall apart. Like you need to figure out who are the people in your life that you can safely fall apart with. Because to your point, like no wife wants their husband laying on the couch just sad about their life and not doing anything to try to change it. But that I got to see those real feelings instead of you trying to package them up and present them in a way that you perceived I needed to see them was so freeing. And I felt felt so like we took our marriage and our intimacy to another level, because I feel way more connected to you, because I was like, now I know how you really fucking feel. Like, because when I didn't know how you felt and I knew what was going on, there was something going on under the surface. I have to, number one, guess. Number two, make up a story of what I think you're feeling, which might not be true.
Yeah. And I think that we've talked about this before about, being emotionally available, what the difference is, right? Between being emotionally available and being emotional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that so here's the question I ask myself is like, I think this is why men's groups exist to a degree, because like, I don't think you have to come as a man with all your problems to your wife. Mm-hmm. But I think that when there's when the time is right and there is like, you know, when the conversation happens and when like you're asking me, and like there is value to like exposing the truth about like how you feel and where you're at, and if you're secure in where you are. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. But again, I think you have to be at a strong foundation to really be naked like that, right? Because me before, like I would take your sadness and your like anxiety and whatnot personally, because mm-hmm. it would either be surrounded like money or safety. I'm like, I'm failing.
Yeah. And I also think too, as that a big point on this would also be is that when you share that level of vulnerability, like do you remember what I said? I was like, I want to help you. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't like, I didn't feel like it was my duty to help you.
Yeah. But I don't want to feel like you need to help me.
But sometimes you need to tell each other, I just need you to help me.
Yeah. And that's okay.
And like, because a lot of this injury, even you've been like, okay, now I can do this by myself. You don't need to help me anymore. And it was almost like you're kind of like pushing me away, and then from even helping you, because you didn't, in your mind, you were like, oh, I don't want to give her more stuff to do. But then there was like, even that night, like I worked on your foot a little bit, like physically worked on your foot. And I was like, oh, and you were like, oh, that was helpful. And I was like, I haven't even touched your foot because I haven't communicated. Like, can I touch it? I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, do I have the skills to help you, or do like, I don't feel confident in that area. So, I think a big thing was just like, that was the giving and the receiving of like, hey, I want to help you. It's not because I feel obligated that I have to, but I didn't really offer that in that way until you vulnerably shared like how you were feeling about what was going on with you. Mm-hmm. And then you could receive my help mm-hmm. in a totally different capacity mm-hmm. because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
So. Yeah. So I think it's like, it's helped me, this past experience is just really like shown me about like, you can have a different level of support for each other. And like I said, we can get through the same story. We both had the same story. I got to hold it together. And reality is that actually what we needed to do was break down and fall apart and let each other hold each other up mm-hmm. or help each other up. And then know that can be done again. And we're not going to it's not going to break us. No. It's actually going to build us.
Well, and my story was like, I didn't want you to worry, AKA I didn't want you to feel like I didn't have it together. Mm-hmm. And then like your forever fear is that you're worried that like I'm going to be taken from you, or that you're dependent on me. And if you lose me, then you're fucked. Mm-hmm. And that was like all of that stress and anxiety leading up to that weekend. Like it took all of that for you to tell me that, mm-hmm. which I understand. And I think that like Steven, our therapist, framed it up in a way that I think will change things for you. Because I think these days, especially like, you know, everybody's wanting to become personally empowered, and I'm all for that. Like I want everybody to be like successful, but I think in order for you to like take your life to a new level, I think like there are vehicles for you to do that. And I realize like starting a business is one way, mm-hmm. like having a child is another way, and mm-hmm. like being married is another way. Mm-hmm. And the challenge with marriage, I think, for people that are hyper independent is that their fear, or their like some of their anxieties is that they are in order for them to like experience a new level of like existence, just like a new level of happiness, joy, like whatever, is that you're going to like have to be dependent on that person that you've decided to share your life with. And the interesting thing about that is like, oh, you got to like be whole before you got to get into marriage. You got to know yourself. You got to be good with yourself. It's like, yeah, I think you can do that while you're in a marriage, still work on yourself. And I think that it's essential. You have to. But on the same token, I think that you also have to learn how to like completely open up to the other person and give yourself 100% to that person, in order for you to like
really feel connected,
become whole.
Yeah.
Right. Because like the analogy he gave us is like, oh, you know, like when you get married, you decide to like jump on a plane and like start to fly. And then
you're at 35,000
and you're at 35,000 feet and you look over to me and you're like, well, what did he say? It's like,
I'm afraid of flying.
I'm afraid of flying. It's like, well, it's too fucking late.
We're already in the air.
We're already in the air. So you're just going to have to like trust.
You're on the ride.
Yeah. So you just have to have faith. So, you know, for you, it's like learning how to have faith. And then, you know, for me is learning how to have belief. Belief is like the word that I came into that journey with.
Yeah. And one of the big things I think that I wanted to like bring it and close on was one of the things when we worked through some of the grief and sadness, we each experiencing, mirroring each other on, even though the grief and sadness was about different things, was that both of us were in agreement that not confronting the grief, the sadness, not processing it, was preventing us from experiencing other feelings we really want to have more often. Yours was happiness, mine was joy. And it felt like in how I voiced it was that sadness was in the way. It kept getting in the way of my joy. And you said the same exact thing. You said, you said sadness too, same emotion. So here we are mirroring the same emotion, two totally different experiences though of why we are experiencing the sadness. And then you're like, and I feel like it's preventing my happiness. Like it's almost like, and it's an obstacle in the way. If you have emotions that you spend a lot of time with, but you spend a lot of time stuffing instead of expressing. And I think that like if you can get really quiet like with yourself of like identifying like, hey, what emotion am I in? Being okay with if it's an emotion that you're a little bit afraid of. I was definitely afraid of the sadness for me, this specific experience. But then on the other side of the experiencing that emotion, whether it's a more negative one, shame, guilt, sadness, fear, anxiety, or a positive one, happiness, joy, freedom, is freedom. And freedom just to be more authentic version of yourself. And if you can become a more authentic version of yourself, then you're safe to be the authentic version of yourself with your spouse, then you get to experience another level of connection and intimacy. Like I feel like we have moved through by working through some of these emotions that, like I said, we were both pushing away or pushing down instead of actually letting move through us or move out of us.
Yeah, well said.
And that's not to say that they're not going to come back. That's the reality is they are going to come back for probably different reasons, maybe the same reason, but I feel like we have a much more safer way for you and I to work through them together rather than just feel like, hey, I got to be isolated and I need to process this completely on my own because I can't trust you with these weird feelings I'm having because I don't know how to deal with them myself. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, close it up.
All right. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. It was helpful for you.
Hopefully you enjoyed this episode about grief and sadness.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Well, it wasn't all about grief and sadness. And we will see you next week.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. No, we need to catch up. So we'll see you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.